Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can we first just confirm, inshallah, that the brothers and sisters can hear loud and clear? Yes, brilliant. Alhamdulillah.
Yes.
All right, okay. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. So, Jazakallah khair for everybody attending today's session, inshallah. We'll quickly start off with a short introduction about the Muslim Family Foundation. Some of you will have attended some of our courses or webinars or live sessions before, and some of you may have not. Now, the Muslim Family Foundation was established about 18 or so months ago, and the whole goal of the foundation is essentially to support Muslim families. And we want to create a society where Muslims are back at the top, right? And the way we see that happening is through the foundation of the family. The family is the building block of a healthy society. And the building block of a healthy family is a healthy marriage. And so, for that reason, one of our points of focus is marriages and how to ensure that couples are having happy, thriving, flourishing, satisfying marriages. Now, in that regard, we are actually in the process of developing a marriage crash course. And this crash course, inshallah, will cover all the basic fundamentals that a Muslim needs to know who is preparing to get married, or even someone in their early days as well. And this crash course, inshallah, will be made completely freely available. Anybody can do it free of charge, and there'll be quizzes and activities for people to do as well. And after you complete the crash course, we will also issue you a certificate. After you successfully complete the quizzes and such, we will issue you a certificate. And the idea is that this certificate shows that you have done, the basic preparation that is required to get married. And the example we often give here at the MFF is that if you have somebody who wants to drive a car, you're not going to let them drive a car, or you're not going to sit with them as a passenger unless they've learned how to drive, unless they have a license. Well, marriage is probably even more important, right? Because it's a matter of your entire life. And so nowadays, we need to make sure that we are adequately prepared for marriage, right? Before we get into the marriage, before we get married. And so for that reason, inshallah, we're developing this course. And so on the screen, you'll see this slide, and you've got a QR code which you can scan. If you scan the QR code, it will take you to our website. And if you register there, inshallah, then as soon as the course is available, we will notify you, and you can sign up and do the course. It'll all be pre-recorded, and you can sign up and do the course free of charge, inshallah. If you're not able to scan the QR code, alternatively, just go to our website, the mff.co.uk. Yeah, the mff.co.uk, and you'll see the tab which says Marriage Crash Course. Click on that and register, inshallah. So that's a little bit about MFF. The last point I'll mention is that we, as an organization, we have 3 points of focus. They are, will this webinar be recorded? Yes, the webinar will be recorded in just a moment. We'll begin the recording, inshallah. So the MFF has 3 points of focus. Point focus number 1 is courses. So we offer marriage courses. We've also offered parenting courses, and we are developing further modules. We have mental health related courses, and there's other things we're working on in the future as well, inshallah, addiction related and other things like that. We also have a counseling service, again, which you can book sessions via our website. And thirdly, we do camps. So camps are things, any community activities. So recently we had a hike at Seven Sisters. Every summer we have a Scotland camp which takes place. We have a camp for brothers in Jordan taking place very soon, and other things. So if you're interested in any of these activities, inshallah, keep up to date via our website. Okay, so I'm just going to start the recording and inshallah introduce Mufti Sab and today's session. So Mufti Sab, if you could go to the next slide, please. Jazakumullah khair. So, Alhamdulillah, today we are discussing mental health or Jinn. Now, the reality is that this session will not just be restricted to a discussion of mental health or Jinn. This will be one part of a broader discussion talking about mental health in Islam as well. Now, the presenter we have with us today, Mufti Ismail ibn Nathir Satia. Mufti Sabi is actually one of our counselors here at the MFF. Mufti Sahib he completed his memorization of the Quran in a local masjid in Blackburn at the age of 13, Masjid Sajidin. Yeah, those in Blackburn will know this masjid. He then went on to complete his Alimiya degree at Jami'atul Ilm wal Huda in Blackburn. And Mufti Sahib, mashallah, then had the honor of studying Ifta in India at Mazahirul Urum, Saharanpur, right, which is again one of the major institutes in India. While there, Mufti Saab also had the privilege of spending time with the great Muhaddith al-Asr, Sheikh Yunus Jaunpuri, rahmatullahi alayh. Mufti Saab is also a qualified counselor, an integrative counselor, in that he combines different disciplines of counseling as a form of holistic therapy. He is also a specialized raqi as well. And because this is his area of expertise, this is what we'll be discussing today. Inshallah, without further ado, then I'll pass it on to Mufti Sab. Jazakumullahu khair. Mufti Sab, up to you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can everybody hear me okay? If you can't hear me at any point, do let me know in the chat, inshallah. I do have a bit of a sore throat, so do mind my voice is not loud enough. So before we start, I want to ask everybody a question, and you can answer by writing in the chat. When I say mental health, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? So if you put it into the chat, inshallah. Okay, so there's a few things that's come up. Depression, anxiety, bipolar, depression again, well-being, anxiety, strange behavior, an issue with your mind, depression, mania, manic attack, illness of the brain like head disease, disorder, a state of mind. Very good. All of these are correct answers. Secondly, what do we think? Is it more to do with men or more to do with women? Both. Very good. Both. Very good. Okay. I ask this question simply because a lot of the times when I've delivered this talk in the masjids, some men are very hesitant to relate it to themselves. Obviously, it does help, affect men and affects women as well, equally. But it's something which we'll discuss later when we do the myths with regards to men. So somebody's wrote, but they don't deal with it as well as women. Okay, very good point. And that's why I asked about the genders. So let's go now to the next slide. The beginnings of mental health. When did mental health issues initially start? So in the West, it started when immigrants started coming to the West. That could be the Americas, Europe, England. Because when the immigrants came, we noticed that obviously they came with nothing, essentially nothing, no clothing, no belongings, no money. So they came with poverty, and poverty attracted mental health issues. So for example, people of the subcontinent, Irish, when they came, a lot of mental health issues started at that time. And at that time, there were 3 types of counseling. So the first was career counseling. Career counseling is basically looking at skills. We look at what type of skills a person has. So for example, if he was good with his hands, maybe we would make him into a plumber. If he was good at IT skills, we'd make him a switchboard officer. If he was good mentally, then we would use him for sales or something he was good at. So they would use career counseling to find what talent, what qualities, what skills you had, and then work upon that. Secondly, the school counseling. So school counseling mainly dealt with issues with students. It was typically like get sent to the head teacher's office, but it could be more complex. The third type of counseling was mental health counseling. Now, mental health counseling involved actual mental health issues, and they range from a number of things, which we'll go through in the next slide. Just a quote of Cresswell there. Now, one of the best cures to mental health illnesses is you have a job, you keep yourself busy. Yeah, Islamically, we always promote as well that one of the best ways to free yourself away from negative things is keep yourself busy. So having a job is one of the best ways to cure mental health issues. Now we come along the term is mental health versus mental disorder. So what is the difference between the two? So mental health, normally, when I say mental health, many of you commented on what sort of things come to mind, but it's usually negative connotations. People usually think if you've got mental health issues, that's negative. But there is also something called positive mental health. So for example, I'm sure wherever you are in the country, particularly in England, the weather's been fantastic today and most of this week. So it boosts people's mental health. Where I'm from up north, Blackburn, people are out and about in parks doing barbecues, and generally their mental health is good. So the point here is everybody has a mental health. It's just where is it on the scales? Is it positive or is it negative? But usually when we refer to it, people always think mental health is negative. It's depression, anxiety, etc. So the definition here by WHO, a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well and work well and contribute to their community. So this is mental health. Now there's something called mental disorder. Now mental disorder is more of when somebody is diagnosed, is characterized by clinically significant disturbance in an individual's cognition, emotional regulation or behavior. It is usually associated with distress or impairment in important areas of functioning. So the difference between the two, like I mentioned, every single one of us at some point in your life, some more than others, will go through mental health issues, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have a mental disorder. A disorder is when you're actually diagnosed, you have bipolar, anxiety, depression, etc. Come on to the next slide. So I mentioned earlier when mental health issues started in the United Kingdom is when immigrants started coming, and it's the same for Western countries and European countries. Another time when mental health issues really shot up was when we had the Great Depression. Now, the Great Depression was early 1930s. Early 1930s, the economy was marked by the effects of the Great Depression. After experiencing a decade of economic stagnation in the 1920s, the UK economy was further hit by the sharp global economic downturn in 1930 to 1931. What this led to was further unemployment issues, which led to poverty. However, although the Great Depression caused significant levels of poverty and hardship, especially in industrial heartlands, the second half of the 1930s was a period of quiet economic recovery. Especially in parts of London and South East, there was mini economic boom with rising living standards and prosperity. What I always describe the Great Depression, it's a bit like 2020, very recent to us, lockdown. Lockdown, we faced similar issues as we had at the time of Great Depression, the Great Depression 90 years ago. Before that, it also caused clashes between spouses, husband and wife, between parents and their children. People lost their job, family members. So back to the slide, it's worth bearing in mind that statistics don't always tell the full story. Unemployment rates were very high higher than unemployment rates that we've had in the 80s and 2000s. But there was a massive difference. In the 1930s, unemployment benefit was minimal. To be unemployed left workers at the real risk of absolute poverty. So this was a time that people suffered a lot of mental health issues. But nevertheless, the good thing about the UK, it was relatively quicker to recover than other developed countries. And then at the bottom, it mentions the lockdown had similar issues. Now we come on to some terminology. So the terminology is words you might hear to do with mental health, psychology, psychiatry, counseling. So when it comes to these terms, sometimes people get very confused. I remember before I got into counseling, I didn't know where to start, because when you look at counseling or psychology, you think, what do I want to do? Which one's for me? So when it comes to psychology, there are 4 types of psychology. Clinical psychology, which is more mental and behavioral. Cognitive psychology, which is mental processes of the brain. Behavioral psychology, which is to do with behavior through conditioning. And the 4th is biopsychology, which is to do with the brain and behavior evolution. Simple example of psychology is I give sometimes is the supermarket. When you go to a supermarket, you will find that the milk, the eggs, your necessities basically are always at the back of the store. This is simple psychology, that they make you walk through all the aisles. So maybe you pick something up, which is not necessary, biscuits, chocolate, crisp, and you put it into your basket. And what's the necessary, the milk, the eggs, the bread, etc., is usually at the back. Another example I like to give, which isn't the best of examples, but it's the drug dealer's example. So hopefully we don't have any drug dealers online with us. But what we hear from drug dealers is when a person wants to start drugs, the drug dealer will normally give cocaine, cannabis, heroin. He'll give it free. First time, he'll give it free. Second time, he'll give it free. Once he's addicted and he needs it and he can't live without it, that's when he'll start charging. So that's the drug dealer psychology. Another one, social media. Social media, the example I give, is because everybody looks at social media and we all like to compare. We like to compare our real lives to the artificial lives of people on social media. Many of you will know the lives on social media, we can never compete with that because they're not real. A lot of people don't put their real videos, photos, etc. It's a type of psychology where you're just showing people your best videos and photos, particularly to do with marriage and children, lifestyle and holidays. So this is another type of psychology. When it comes to counseling, there are different types of counseling. So we have person-centered counseling. Now, person-centered counseling mainly focuses on the human belief that the client is inherently driven towards and has the capacity for growth and self-actualization. In person-centered counseling, what we believe is that you are your expert. And a lot of counselors offer just person-centered counseling, or they may offer other modes of counseling, but it will basically work on emotions and feelings, and it works for some people. Then we have CBT. CBT actually works on the way you think, the way you manage your problems, and commonly people use CBT for things like anxiety and depression. Then we have psychodynamic. Now, psychodynamic focuses more on the unconscious process and how they are manifested in the client's present behavior. So it focuses a lot on what's happening now. If anybody's had psychodynamic counseling, it will focus and the goals will be on self-awareness and understanding and the influence of past and present behaviors. And then lastly, we have a term called psychiatry. So I don't want to complicate it too much and make it difficult, but some of these terms, if someone has mental health issues or they need counseling, they may need to know a bit about counseling and psychiatry. So psychiatry is where the therapists will specialize in just mental health issues. They will evaluate, treat, and diagnose psychiatric issues. The difference between psychology and psychiatry, psychology will only deal with mental health, whereas psychiatrists will also deal with medicine side, the medicinal side, and mental health issues as well. So now we come on to the mind, body, and soul. So Islamically, we believe all three are important. So your body is your physical body, your mind is your brain, and your soul is spiritual, what we call our spiritual side. So Islamically, we focus on all three. Now, many times people focus on their body. For example, somebody goes to the gym. Somebody goes to the gym, they're working out, they're eating healthy, mashallah, they're very muscular, athletic body. So their body is very good. If they don't work on their soul, their character, your salah, your dhikr, etc., then he may have a very good body, but his character won't be the best. And then we have the mind. All three Islamically are important. And there's a hadith, a famous hadith, which backs it up, that three Sahabis, one of them said that he will fast every day. He will fast every day and he won't eat. Another one said, I will do Qiyamul Layl, I will do Tahajjud every night and I won't sleep. And the third one said, he will not have relationship with his wife. So the Prophet ﷺ, he heard this. The Prophet ﷺ was upset and he mentioned to these three Sahabis, إِنَّ لِرَبِّكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا وَإِنَّ لِجَسَدِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا وَإِنَّ لِأَهْلِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا. So this proves that all three things are important. That verily for your Lord, he has rights. Verily your body has rights. And even your wife and children, they have rights. So these Sahaba, they were only focusing just on the soul. They're going to fast, they're going to do Qiyamul Layl, and I won't go to my wife and have relationship because they felt maybe that's like worldly, dunya, materialistic things. But the Prophet ﷺ said these things are very important. Now, if a person has psychological issues in the mind, if a person is connected to the dunya, if a person is malnourished, then that person cannot worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala correctly. That person, he can't connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He won't find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what we realize, all of them are important. Very important that a person focuses on both things. Body, you look after yourself, you eat healthy. So sometimes we see with the religious people as well. They worship. They don't look after their body. They don't eat healthy, drink healthy. They don't sleep enough. And they don't socialize maybe. So they may have mental health issues because they're just focusing on the worship, like monks basically. So, and then we have people who just focus on the body. They don't pray salah, they don't wear hijab. There's no spirituality. So all three things are important. Now, when it comes to mental health, I mentioned at the start that sometimes men don't like to talk about mental health issues. Sometimes men think it's not a man thing to cry and be emotional, is a woman thing. So we give evidence from the Quran of three prophets, alayhimus salam, and their grief. So the first is Ayub alayhi salam. Ayub alayhi salam, I'm sure many of you will know, Ayub alayhi salam went through illness for many, many years. And his wife supported him, but he lost wealth. He lost many children in this time. He lost a lot of the people around him because this illness went on for years and years and years. And no doubt Ayub alayhi salam was going through grief. The famous dua, Rabbi anni massani ad-dur wa anta arhamur rahimin. That, oh my Lord, calamity has afflicted me and you are the most merciful. Many of you will recite this for anxiety, grief and depression. Rabbi anni massani ad-dur wa anta arhamur rahimin. So that's Ayub alayhi salam. Yaqub alayhi salam. The famous story of Yusuf alayhi salam. When Yusuf alayhi salam, his brothers were jealous and then threw him in a well, essentially to kill him, to remove him from his father's face. Yaqub alayhi salam loved Yusuf alayhi salam. The whole story, he went to Egypt and he got sold. And many years, at least about 30, 35 years, Yaqub alayhi salam, he lost his most beloved son and he uses Binyamin. The Quran says, وَابْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that his eyes went white. And what it basically means, he lost his eyesight. It's a metaphor that he lost his eyesight due to extreme sadness, grief, and crying. مِنَ الْحُزْنِ فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. So this is a great prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who also went through grief. So how can anybody say that grieving or being sad or crying is just for women? Here, a prophet cried so much, he lost his eyesight. I don't know many people, if any, who lost their parents, or a parent, or child, or wife, or husband, and they cried so much and grieved so much they lost their eyesight. Then it comes on to the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he also had a whole year where the Prophet ﷺ, it was known as Amul Huzn, the year of grief. And many people will know that in Amul Huzn, it basically means the year of grief. The Prophet ﷺ lost two passionate supporters. One was his wife, beloved wife Khadija radiallahu anha, and the second was Abu Talib. Abu Talib, although he didn't become Muslim, but Abu Talib was a passionate supporter of the Prophet ﷺ. Till his death, he supported him. He didn't accept Islam. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he lost these two companions, his wife and his uncle, he had a whole year of grief. So if somebody says to cry and be sad and be emotional, it's only for women. The greatest man, the Prophet ﷺ, had a whole year where he went through grief. Another example where the Prophet ﷺ was grieving and very upset is when Hamza radiallahu anhu, he lost his life in the battle of Uhud, and he had a spear thrown through him and he was killed. The Prophet ﷺ was very upset. He was very upset. He prayed the janazah salah of Hamza radiallahu anhu 70 times. 70 times thereafter he stated, if it was not for my auntie, I would leave my uncle's body, Hamza's body, he was mutilated. I would leave it for vultures to come and eat. And on the day of Qiyamah, Hamza radiallahu anhu's body will be resurrected from the stomachs of vultures. So the Prophet ﷺ, he was very upset. He was grieving, and we're allowed to grieve. We're allowed to be upset. And this all relates to mental health issues. Sometimes people grieve, but they don't deal with the process. So now we come on to some of the Islamic scholars behind Islamic psychology, Islamic theology, because often if you study in university or colleges, they only mention the Western scholars, but there are many Muslim scholars. So the first one we have is Imam Ibn Sina, rahmatullahi alayh, also known as Avicenna. The English names, they often change to the English names to promote it as a Western psychologist. But Ibn Sina, he was known as the father of early modern medicine. He was one of the greatest sages of Islamic medicine. So Ibn Sina is a name everybody will know. He was very much into philosophy and medicine, and many of his writings include astronomy, alchemy, geography, logic, mathematics, physics. Second, we have Al-Kindi. Imam Kindi, rahmatullahi alayh, he was very much linked to dreams. He was a philosopher, he was a mathematician. So in the Western world, many of you who studied psychology or counseling will know Freud. Freud is big interpretations. In the Islamic world, it was Al-Kindi who first introduced about dreams and interpretations and expanded his work on there. One thing I do say about dreams is be very careful. Obviously, nowadays with social media, we have many people who interpret dreams fraudulently. They make a lot of money. And there is a lot of soothsayers with regards to dreams. The next name is Ali bin Sahal Rabbani, rahmatullahi alayh. So Ali bin Sahal Rabbani, Tabari, rahmatullahi alayh, he wrote a book, Firdaus al-Hikmah. Firdaus al-Hikmah basically means the paradise of wisdom. The paradise of wisdom, and it's one of the oldest encyclopedias on medicine. So Ali bin Sahal Rabbani is a name we should remember. He also focused on the doctor-patient relationship, the perceptions and emotions of behavior, why we feel, how we feel, child development, etc. The next name is a name I think many of us will know, Imam Fakhruddin Razi, rahmatullahi alayh. So he was famous for many things, also known in the Western world as Razis. He wrote one of the largest encyclopedias, particularly in connection to the mind and body, also in relation to sorrow, grief, depression. So Imam Razi is a name I'm sure many of you will know and you will understand. And then the last person is Abu Zayd Balkhi, rahmatullahi alayhi. So Abu Zayd Balkhi, rahmatullahi alayhi, he was from Persia. He was also a disciple of Kindi, who I mentioned earlier. Abu Zayd Balkhi focused on more what we call CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and he would focus on the patterns of flawed thinking, overgeneralizing. So, for example, a person, he went to an interview, he didn't get the job, and he turns around and says, I can never get a job because he just failed one interview. Or a person, he disagrees with somebody, he had a fallout, and he overgeneralizes and says, nobody likes me. So these sort of flawed thinking, he focused on that. And then Imam Ghazali, rahmatullahi alayhi. Imam Ghazali, rahmatullahi alayhi, again, and many of us will know, wrote the famous book, Ihya Ulumuddin. Even some universities teach it. Focused a lot on spiritual issues, which are connected to psychological issues. And he also focused on the self, the nafs. The Quran elaborates on 3 types of nafs, 3 types of yourself. The first is now nafs lawwama, nafs ammara, and nafs mutma'inna. So nafs mutma'inna is what we should aim, and our objective and goal in life is the pure soul. Allah says, Ya ayyuhan nafsul mutma'inna irji'i ila rabbika radiyatan mardiyah fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. Allah will tell the pure soul to enter paradise. Nafsi ammara is the evil soul, the bad soul, which always tells you to do sin. In the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, وَمَا أُضَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ. And then nafs al-lawwama is what we call the critical soul. It sometimes tell you to do good and bad, and it will critique your actions. Now we come on to the next part of the first psychiatric ward. So the first psychiatric ward, Islamically, was in 705 CE in Baghdad in Iraq. So this is something Muslims should remember, because on the next slide, I'm going to do a bit about a hospital in England, which was many centuries ago, but we'll try and compare the two. So the first psychiatric ward was in Baghdad, and its main focus was treating these psychiatric patients with dignity. Why do I mention that? Is we know when somebody has psychiatric issues, mental issues, and they're in a mental ward, like many people will say in Urdu, "Wo to pagal hai, pagal khana mein gaya," which is a very derogatory term. This psychiatric ward focuses on respecting human beings and treating them with dignity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَرَزَقْنَاهُمْ مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. The first part of the verse basically means Allah is saying, we have honored the children of Adam alayhi salam. So it's very important, no matter what medical, mental health issues, spiritual issues a person has, it's important to treat humans with dignity. Some of the things in the psychiatric ward is they offered clean clothing. They used to bathe them daily. They would give hot meals, healthy food. And they were located in the middle of the town. Why were they located in the middle of the town? It's because they wanted people to visit them and see them. It's very important that people have this human interaction. They had nice gardens. It improves their mood when they walk around with trees and water, etc. And they also had something called murafikun. They had something called murafikun, which are basically companions and helpers. So these would come, in this day and age, you would say it was like a chaplain. It was like a chaplain. They would come, support them, talk to them, offload. And they were in very relaxing, soothing environments. The main thing was not casting them aside and not making them feel worse. So this is hundreds of years, 705 CE, hundreds of years before Western psychology came into place. So we can see, and we should remember this as Muslims, the first psychiatric ward and how they treated people is very important. So now I'll come on to Bedlam Hospital. So Bedlam Hospital, also known as Bethlehem Royal Hospital, was founded in 1247 with an aim to collect alms for the new order of Our Lady of Bethlehem. It became a hospital for the insane somewhere between 1377 and 1403. So this hospital was basically for people who were mentally insane. They were not well. But like I said, it was a long time ago, but it's still good to know how Westerners, Europeans, and British people treated these patients compared to what I just said in Baghdad in 705. So by the 17th century, the hospital became known for housing disturbed patients and featured in many plays. The conditions were really bad. They were abysmal. Some patients being restrained constantly, left in their own excrement, and several were recorded to have starved to death. They just wouldn't feed them. Corrupt staff exchanged basic resources for gifts in kind. Between the 17th and 18th centuries, medical practices for mental illness became popular, and Bedlam patients were often subject to cruel, unproven treatments such as cold bathing, bleeding, blistering, and forced purging. Not everyone survived these treatments. Visitors became popular during the late 17th century. Now, this is an important part, that how British people treated these patients. So they had visitors come. Why would visitors come? Bedlam became popular for a bank holiday destination amongst the wealthy and well-bred who would pay a donation to entry. So you'd buy a ticket and it was like a museum or even a cinema or a theatre. You'd come and it would be done in a mocking, derogatory way, that you would pay, the rich people would pay and look at these patients. By 1770, visitors had to obtain a paid ticket to enter. Visitors would enjoy tormenting the patients, which ranged from many things: mockery, physical assaulting, and sexually assaulting them. Public opinion began to turn in 1814 when a Quaker land agent reported on the horrific conditions and abuse with Bedlam. Bedlam till today remains open as a psychiatric hospital offering inpatient and outpatient mental health services for children, adolescents, adults, and older people from all over the UK. Facilities include a swimming pool, gym, gallery of patients, art, craft workshops, and restaurant. While much has been done to change the public perception of Bethlehem, the death of a restrained patient, Olasani Lewis, led to sign his law in 2018 requiring hospitals to be more open about their use of restraint. So we can see just from this, we can see that how the Islamic world was treating patients and how in England, this was in England, how they were treating people and what that led to. Okay, so now we will move on to some myths. So myths of mental health. So there are many myths, what people don't understand about mental health, misconceptions. People have heard things, and sometimes what happens is because of this, either they don't believe in mental health, or they believe in mental health, but they don't seek counseling, they don't seek help. So one of the first myths is that mental health issues are only for white Europeans. So where does this come from? That many of the Western psychologists, Western founders of counseling, Aaron Beck, the CBT, Freud, Carl Rogers, etc., they were all white. Because the founders were white, people then think that mental health issues are just for white people. They're not for Asian people. They're not for Muslims. And Islam and mental health is completely different. Whereas this is incorrect, because on the previous slide, I just mentioned many Islamic scholars who are into psychology and Islamic medicine. So to think that this is not an Islamic thing is totally incorrect. I've also mentioned some of the prophets who suffered grief and anxiety, etc. So where does this come from is when the Western world introduced mental health issues or counseling, it wasn't diversified. It was mainly for middle-class whites. So their statistics, their audience were mainly middle-class whites. And that's why a lot of people think it's just for that category. The second myth is I'm not going to get better by talking to someone. So a lot of people, and I've met people who say this as well, Now, what's talking going to do? You guys only listen. You don't essentially give advice, which is true because, like I said at the start about person-centered counseling, we don't believe know you whether so a lot of people, and I've met people who say this as well, but what's talking going to do? Okay. So basically, what's talking going to do? Now, sometimes people would rather take medication, swallow a pill, and think they just get better. They just want a quick fix. So they think going to counseling and back to men. When I was studying counseling, I think out of about 24 students, 4 were men. That's 4 male counselors going to qualify, and 20 were women. And this, when I speak to counselors, it's usually the same statistics, like a fifth or a quarter of the class is men. Secondly, with clients were mostly women because women go for counseling. It's very difficult to get men to go for counseling. And one of the reasons is men sometimes, we like to bottle it up, we like to keep it in, and we think exactly what this says. I'm not going to get better just by talking to somebody. What we've got to understand is professional counseling is based on theories. It's not just talking for the sake of talking. So, for example, I'm talking to you now, but it's not just random talking. It's not just random talking. Okay, I think there's a bit of interference there. So, when people go for counseling, it's based on experience and theories. They ask certain questions, usually open questions with intent and purpose. It's not just randomly talking where you're ranting. But one thing I do say is when it comes to counseling, what benefits? Okay, is somebody's microphone on? Okay, I think that's better. Thank you. So basically, what benefit does talking give? And by the way, if anybody's got a question, inshallah, we will have the last 20 to 30 minutes for questions. So please send in all the questions. It's just that they'll get lost in the chat. So what benefit does talking give? Now, maybe for some of us, we offload to our spouse. You offload to your friend. You offload to your wife. And maybe you don't need counseling. Maybe that's good enough for you. But believe it or not, sometimes as Muslims, they find this hard to believe, but it's something they do teach us in counseling. A lot of people don't have a safe space to offload. They can't talk to their wife because their wife doesn't understand them. Or maybe it's about the wife or her family. So it's going to be biased. Maybe there's a child who doesn't get on with his parents or siblings. So he doesn't have that safe space. When they come for counseling, we offer them UPR, unconditional positive regard. We don't judge them. Whatever you say in counseling, we could never say you're a bad person, you've made a wrong decision, or if it's Islamic counseling, we can't say like you're going to go to hell. We can't say that. The rules of counseling, you can't make judgments on people and you can't make decisions for people. So back to what's the point of talking to somebody? What's talking going to do? Talking in a non-judgmental environment, somebody who's not biased, somebody who's impartial. Not everybody has that space. And hopefully that clears that. Number 3, you are weak if you have mental health therapy. So again, I would say maybe there are some women who believe this, but I would say it's more coming from men. If you have mental health issues, what do we tell men? You need to man up. Bro, you need to man up. You shouldn't be crying. You shouldn't feel low. You need to toughen up. And that's why I say it probably comes from men, this misconception. But it's not necessary because I mentioned about the Prophet ﷺ when he lost Khadija radiallahu anha and his uncle Abu Talib. A whole year was called Amul Huzn. There's another verse in the Quran. فَلَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, It's very possible you're going to destroy yourself. Allah yakunu mu'minin. If these people do not become Muslim, you're going to destroy yourself, basically. You're beating yourself up about it. What we would say in this day and age, the terms would be, don't beat yourself up about it. So the Prophet ﷺ, when people would not believe, he would beat himself up about it. He's going to destroy himself. Also, how many times did the Prophet ﷺ face psychological issues? He buried his wife, his son, his uncle Abu Talib. He faced boycott. He saw his companions getting tortured. All of this affected the Prophet ﷺ. And many times the Prophet ﷺ would go through grief. So it's incorrect to say you are weak if you have mental health therapy. The next one, counseling negates trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you go to counseling, you seeking help, means you don't have tawakkul. So Sheikh Muaz mentioned at the start that I also do ruqya. But with my counseling, I also do ruqya. So when people come to me and seek help for ruqya, that would also negate trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to this myth. It's incorrect. It's incorrect. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told Aisha radiallahu anha, perform ruqya on yourself or seek it from somebody. Basically, if you're so badly affected, then tell somebody to recite on you. And that's why we have people who are in this field. So I can use the analogy for counseling. Maybe in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was no such formal counseling, but the Prophet ﷺ, I always say, himself was a counselor. The Prophet ﷺ himself was a counselor. He was the best of counselors. Alhamdulillah, as an alim, when I was doing my counseling degree, there were many opinions, and like there is on everything nowadays. And I was very hesitant as well because of all these myths and theories. So after many years, I did a degree on counseling, but alhamdulillah, I completed it. And one of the things was this thing that you don't need to do counseling. It's not an Islamic thing. But I always used to give an answer that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people would come to him, the Sahaba, his wives, and they would seek counsel, advice, mashwara, whatever you call it. It's counseling. He would give an impartial opinion. He would not be biased. He would not judge them. Even if a person had committed fornication, drank alcohol, or committed theft, the Prophet ﷺ would deal with it according to the Quran. He would not say to them, you're going to Jahannam, you're a bad person, you're the worst person. So counseling does not negate trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are many examples I can give. One last example is going to the doctors. If somebody says to me, counseling is kufr and shirk and negates trust in Allah, then so is going to the doctors. Going to the doctors, seeking medical help, taking medicine is completely halal. It's perfectly fine. As long as you believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate being that gives shifa. It's the same thing we promote in ruqya, and it's the same thing as if it's Islamic counseling, we will promote in counseling. We will always remind people that in the end, everything resorts back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how can anybody say that it's against tawakkul? On the topic of tawakkul, I always like to relate the story of Umar radiallahu anhu. So once in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, he saw some people lying in the masjid, and he basically admonished them and said, what are you guys doing? It was like daytime. So don't you have a job? Don't you have family? So these people said to Umar radiallahu anhu, Nahnu mutawakkilun. Nahnu mutawakkilun. We are from those category of people that rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tawakkul. We've got trust in Allah. So we don't need to work. Umar radiallahu anhu, he stamped his staff on the ground. He got angry at them and he said, La bal antum mutawakkilun. And mutawakkilun basically means you're lazy. You people are lazy. And this is why we always, in counseling, we always get people to become active, proactive, stay busy, get a job if you can. Obviously, if somebody has medical conditions, they can't get a job, that's different. But it's back to the quote of Cresswell I said at the start as well. Western theories also promoted getting a job is the best cure to mental health. I also understand not everybody can get a job. But the reason why I put the quote of Umar radiallahu anhu here is to do with tawakkul. Tawakkul isn't sitting at home on the sofa, switching channels on the remote control. The benefit system in this country is there for a reason. We should use it, not abuse it. So it's very important that we understand what true tawakkul is. For example, I work, many of you listening work. This isn't against tawakkul. I work as a means, get wages, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us barakah. So this is just a bit of a tangent on tawakkul itself. But like I said about the doctors, about ruqya, any sort of therapy, then they all negate trust in Allah is incorrect. The last one, nobody does counseling in our community. So some people, they basically don't go for counseling because there's not enough counselors. I have heard this because people prefer a Muslim person. Sometimes when it's related to marriage and safeguarding issues, going through the NHS, going to a white person, basically, they might be worried that they might flag up certain safeguarding issues. So the simple answer to that is then we need more people. We need more Muslim counselors. And in counseling, they do promote this. When I was doing my degree, I think there was about 3-4 Muslims, Asians, and they said we need more in the Asian community. Black people need their community, Hindus need their community. It's not something that the NHS says that everybody should go to a white person or white Christian. You should counsel your own community and your own culture just so that you understand the culture. So hopefully that's clarified these myths. Now moving on to specific myths related to men. So there's some that usually come from men. So number one is, why can't you go? Why can't you go and get help? So basically what it's trying to say, why can't you go out and get help? So a lot of men, sometimes they think, I'm strong. I don't need help. I don't need to go out for help. Seeking help, they think it may be a sign of weakness. So a lot of men sometimes, back to lockdown, I remember there were men, especially in the north, who were testing positive for corona, and they wouldn't isolate. They would go out to work because they would think that's the manly thing to do. So sometimes as men, we think we're macho men, we think we're alpha male, but we don't need to go out and seek help. But what we need to understand, seeking help is strength because it will make you stronger. Not seeking help, to me, is quite cowardly. The second thing from men is counseling is for women. Counseling is just for women. Now, I said the stats earlier. In my class, I remember 24 students, there was only 4 men, 20 women. Yeah. So that's like a fifth, less than a fifth of men. When we looked at clients, most of the clients coming were women. So where this myth comes from is more women are qualifying as counselors, more of the clients are women, but that does not mean men do not need counseling. Men don't grieve, men don't cry, men don't get emotional, men don't go through mental health issues. Suicidal rates, Google it. Any town, any city, the highest rates are in men. More suicides in men. So one of the reasons why this came about is we have to look at the founders of psychology, whether it's Carl Rogers, Ehrenberg, Freud, or we look in the Muslim world, all the names I mentioned, the Imams were all men. Maybe there are some women, even in the Islamic world. Couldn't find many women in Islamic psychology, but maybe they are, and I'm happy for somebody to put it into the chat if somebody knows of women who were founders or writers in Islamic psychology. But if we look it up, all the founders are men. So how can anybody say that counseling is just for women? For example, if we look in the world, a lot of the greatest chefs, the top chefs, are men. Let's be honest. All these programs that come, cooking programs, a lot of them are men. No doubt there are women as well. But a lot of the world's top chefs are men. But if I ask, who does the cooking in the house? Who cooks every day? You won't find many men who cook every day. It's the mothers and the wives. So similarly, just because women are going for counseling, we need to remember the founders of Islamic psychology and Western world are men. So it's definitely something men need to push, men need to get out and seek counseling. And that's both Western and Islamic psychology will prove that. The next myth from men is, I don't have a problem. Denial, basically. And denial is one of the most difficult issues. And I do agree myself from my experience. And I say openly in talks in the masjid, I have said that with men and denial, it's a massive issue. It's an epidemic. Like they will even come for help, counseling. It's the same in Ruqya. And when we tell them, they don't really accept it. Some even argue. Some will justify their actions. But I always say, if you don't have a problem, then how come you're up late at night till 1, 2, 3 in the morning? Why are you taking drugs or even alcohol? Why does your family complain about you? If you don't have a problem, we need to ask men, how come? I'm not saying there's just problems with men. There are many women who have addiction issues as well. But usually when it comes to men, it's denial, and we don't think we have a problem. The last one, I'm not crazy. I don't need to go. So crazy could be interpreted as mad, insane, mental, or bagel. So until you're not bagel, basically, until you're not mental and you're absolutely losing it, you don't need to go for counseling. You don't have to be crazy. In my counseling career, I can't remember many patients or clients I dealt with that were absolutely crazy. Some just have a heavy workload. Some, maybe they got married young and now the marriage is a problem, so they can't deal with it. Some children, teenagers are an issue. Work is an issue. Debt, addiction. They're not crazy. You don't have to be crazy to go for counseling. We all need uplifting at times. We all need somebody to pick us up. And like I said, very fairly, some of us will have our husbands, wives. That's fine. Young children will have parents who will do the counseling for them. But it's sometimes where you don't have that space and you need somebody impartial, seek counseling. Okay, so now we come on to depression and sadness. So there are many mental health issues. I'm just conscious of the time as well, because maybe in about half an hour, 6:30, we'll start the questions. So we don't have time to go through all the mental health issues. So I picked out some of the important ones. So depression is very common. And some people use the term sadness. So what is depression and what is sadness? Depression affects people in various ways and can cause wide variety of symptoms. They range from lasting feelings of unhappy, just not happy, hopelessness. Even many Muslims, they lose hope in Allah, they lose hope in the religion, they lose hope in the Prophet ﷺ and his sayings. That the hadith says this, but why does this happen to my life? They lose interest in things you used to enjoy and you feel very tearful, you just feel like crying all the time. Many people with depression also have symptoms of anxiety. Anxiety will cover shortly. So there can be physical symptoms too, such as feeling constantly tired, sleeping badly, having no appetite or sex drive, and various aches and pains. So physical symptoms you can have of depression as well, and you can have from not feeling happy, losing hope. The symptoms of depression range from mild to severe. So that's why some people think depressed is only severe, but you can have mild depression. You're going through a divorce, you lost your mom, your dad, you lost your job, you may have mild depression. At its mildest, how do you feel? You simply feel persistently low in spirit, while severe depression can make you even feel suicidal. So that's why I say maybe a lot of people will go through mild depression at some point in their life. We all have problems. Trials and tribulations are part of Islam and part of the Ummah. But it's when it gets to, when you don't address it, when it's mild, it can lead to severe depression. That makes a person feel, I no longer want to live. Life is no longer worth living. Most people experience feelings of stress, anxiety, or low mood during difficult times. And that's why I say everybody listening will have had one difficult time in your life. It might have been when you were young, you lost your parents. It might be when you're old, when you got married. Or maybe there's people listening who are in their 50s and 60s and they're going through it because they're lonely. Their children and grandchildren have left them. So a low mood may improve after a short time rather than being a sign of depression. So the difference between depression and sadness, depression is long term and it can be quite serious as well. Secondly, sadness is more temporary. Sadness, again, many people can go through sadness for various reasons, but it's not as serious and the symptoms are very different, which will do the symptoms of depression now. But sadness is not long lasting. If somebody has long lasting or these symptoms which you're going to go through, it's most likely depression. So continuous low mood or sadness. So can you see the word continuous? Not temporary, a day or two. Feeling hopelessness or beyond help. Nobody can help me. I don't think I can fix my situation. Feeling tearful, you're always crying. Low self-esteem. You don't feel good about yourself. Feelings of guilt and shame for various reasons. You've done something, even you've committed a sin. Sins can make people depressed, especially the embarrassing sins. Irritability, so you're always getting annoyed, irritated quickly. Low tolerance for other people. Everything slightly and rub annoys you. You don't have tolerance for people. Loss of interest, motivation, or enjoyment. Nothing pleases you. Hobbies, going out with people, socializing, your job. You're no longer interested. You're no longer interested in your marriage. Inability to make decisions is also a sign of depression, where people can't make decisions for themselves. Anxiety, which we'll cover shortly. Feelings of numbness, self-harm, or suicidal ideation, which we said is quite severe depression. So somatic symptoms such as stomach aches, lack of energy or fatigue, just don't feel like you want to do anything. Disturbed sleep patterns, so you're staying up awake at night till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Depression. Social avoidance, you don't go to weddings anymore, you don't go to the masjid, stay inside. Problems with work, relationships, or home life. So marriage doesn't work out for you, you keep getting divorced, or you can't get married. Jobs don't work out for you, you lose your job, you're not turning up at work, your relationship with your parents isn't good. The last one, signs of self-neglect. You're not looking after yourself. So there's different types of depression as well. According to DSM-5, depressive orders, SAD, seasonal affective disorder, which many people in this country get, particularly in winter. Depression through grief, you've lost somebody or you've lost a baby, etc. Clinical depression, which can be mild, moderate, or severe, and postnatal depression. Now we'll come on to anxiety. So like I said, there are many disorders, but we won't get time to go through all of them. So depression, I've gone through briefly, and the next one is anxiety. So GAD, known as generalized anxiety disorder, is where you feel anxious most of the time. You're always on edge. Something's going to happen. You don't feel relaxed or comfortable or at ease. Symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder vary from person to person, but include constant worrying, a sense of dread and difficulty concentrating. You may also experience physical signs of anxiety, such as a pounding heart and sweating. So generalized anxiety is very different for every single person. So anxiety comes up a lot in counseling, and every person, man and woman, is different as well. So it could be you're always worried. You're worried about school, you're worried about college, you're worried about waking up in the morning, you're worried about going to school, going to sleep. A sense of dread and difficulty concentrating. So you can't focus on things. You may also experience physical signs of anxiety, such as pounding heart and sweating. So your heart beating fast because you've met somebody you don't like, or you bumped into someone you don't get on with. Sweating is also a sign of anxiety. Things like exercising and taking less intoxicants can help with generalized anxiety disorder. Treatments, including talking therapies and medicine, can help. Everybody has some sort of anxiety. It's normal to have a bit. Yeah. Some people give a talk or a seminar and they get anxious or nervous. It's normal. Some people have GCSEs. It's normal. Some people will have different sort of phobias which cause anxieties. So many people will have anxiety for different reasons. So if you have to tackle a problem at work, to go to an interview, take a test, GCSEs are coming up, A levels are coming up, for example, and anxiety can even be beneficial sometimes. For example, anxiety helps us notice dangerous situations and focuses our attention so we stay safe. So there's times where we could call it maybe positive anxiety, that a person he's in a difficult situation in life and he gets a bit of anxiety, so he focuses more. He's serious about it. Let's just say for marriage. Marriage is an example. A person gets a bit of anxiety going to see a girl or a guy, and gets a bit of anxiety, and that makes them more serious on marriage rather than have a relaxed approach. An anxiety disorder goes beyond the regular nervousness and slight fear you may feel from time to time. An anxiety disorder happens when anxiety interferes with your ability to function. You often overreact when something triggers your emotions. You can't control your responses to these situations. Anxiety disorders can make it difficult to get through the day. Fortunately, there are several effective treatments for anxiety disorders. So we will go through some of the treatments, but this, if somebody is unsure that have I got anxiety, if someone's not sure about their emotions and what triggers them off, this basically just explains what anxiety is. So it mentions every single one of us will have a bit of anxiety at one point. It's obviously major anxiety or having panic attacks. That's when somebody needs to take it seriously. What are the symptoms of anxiety? So, feeling restless and unable to focus. Feeling on edge, as if something is about to happen. Irritability, you're always getting annoyed, irritated by things. Racing heartbeat or chest pain. So you get fast palpitations, chest pain. You feel like something's going to happen. Feeling lightheaded or dizzy. Feeling lightheaded or dizzy sometimes can be a sign of anxiety. Sweating. So again, it's a hot day today. That's not a sign of anxiety, but normally a person gets very sweaty, sweaty palms, throughout his or her body, the sweating. Loss of appetite or nausea can also be symptoms of anxiety. Uncontrolled shaking. That a person gets so anxious, nervous, panicky, that the shaking is uncontrollable. Feeling hot, especially in the face or ears, you get very warm, heat in your face, head, ears. Racing thoughts or inability to think cohesively. A person gets a lot of thoughts. He's doing something, or sometimes they're not doing something, just loads of thoughts. Obsessive or intrusive thoughts. Islamically, we might call this waswasa. So a person gets a lot of doubts, paranoia, what we might call. So Islamically, when praying salah, people get intrusive thought. Have a bit 2 rakats or 3 rakats of dhuhr. Did I do my wudu, or did I forget to do my masa? Did I wash my feet or did I not wash my feet? So waswasa, intrusive thoughts, same thing. Tearfulness, person keeps them feel like crying. Avoidance of triggers such as social situations or heaviness. So avoidance of triggers such as social situations or work is basically, you'll know that something's going to happen, something's going to trigger you off. If you go out, meet people, if you go to a social setting or going to work, so you avoid it completely. Heaviness, your mind, your heart, your chest feels heavy, and having panic attacks, which I said can be severe anxiety. So before we start this slide, there's a few things from the Quran as well, which talk about anxiety. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I have created mankind, human being, in constant struggle. So there's always going to be toil and struggle and turmoil in life. Life is not easy. Now people try to escape these thoughts and emotions and behaviors and stress in different ways. So if you look at the story of Musa alayhi salam, when he met Fir'aun, the Quran says, قُلْنَا لَا تَخَفْ إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْأَعْلَى. We told Musa alayhi salam, do not fear, you will be dominant. قَالَ لَا تَخَافَ إِنَّنِي مَعَكُمَ أَسْمَعُ وَأَرَى. That we are with you. Because Musa alayhi salam was in a situation where he was meeting a tyrant who claimed to be God. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala supported him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala endorsed that we are here with you. And that would have released Musa alayhi salam's fear and anxiety. There is also a dua to help with anxiety. Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'altahu sahla wa anta taj'alul hazna idha shi'ta sahlan, or sometimes sahlan idha shi'ta. Both narrations are there. So this is a famous dua we give for exams, we give for anxiety. It basically says, Allah, there's nothing easy except what you can make easy. And you can make grief and sorrow easy as well. So this is a dua you might want to learn. One of the ways to help with anxiety is monitoring your thoughts. You know how it said some people get excessive thoughts? Monitor your thoughts. Relax. Don't overgeneralize. Overgeneralizing people causes them anxiety. Like I mentioned earlier, a person doesn't get a job. I can never get a job because you failed one interview. That's number one. Magnifying things. Making things, small thing, a mountain of a molehill. Something small happened, do not magnify it. Labeling yourself. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I'm not good at this. Focusing on the task on hand is very important. People who have a lot of anxiety, take each day as it comes, take each task as it comes. You can't manage, you can't multitask. Don't open all those tabs in your head. Just keep one tab open. And then things like taking walks, hot showers, hot baths also help. Now, this slide is just linked generally with the depression and anxiety. Top tips for helpful thinking. So how can we monitor our thoughts and reframe some of our emotions and thoughts is be aware. So most people, they don't know when they think, their thinking patterns are getting out of the way. So it's very important to be self-conscious, be aware of yourself, tune into your thoughts. When things aren't going so well, see if you can spot an unhelpful thinking pattern. That why aren't things going right for me? Is there something I'm negative about? So be aware of yourself. And Islamically, this is very important as well, muhasabah, etc. Take the good friend test. Take the good friend test is basically ask yourself what a good friend would say about what you're thinking. So if you're having a lot of thoughts and you're not sure, now good friends can often help us to see positives in any situation. That's the sign of a good friend. Sometimes we can't see it, they can see it. So good friends can also tell, you're making excuses when you're in denial. So ask yourself, what will my friend say? Celebrate success. Every day take time out, write a list of all the positive things you've done for yourself today, in the week, rather than get annoyed with yourself that I've not done this, I've not done this. So making a list, journaling, keeping a diary, these things help. The more you draw attention to what you've done, the confident you'll feel that you'll achieve your goals. So writing positive things will help you. You look at it and think, you know what? I've had a good week. The next one is apply the do one thing. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, you've got a lot of thoughts, you've got a lot of pressure in your mind, just do one thing at a time. Pick the smallest thing and the easiest thing and commit to that one thing. Then you'll be surprised at what else you can achieve. Don't try and do too many things at once. Be experimental. Be experimental. Tell yourself that you don't know how things are going to turn out. Yeah, experimenting. But living with the regret is sometimes worse than never trying at all. So if you don't ever try anything, you'll never know. Yeah, we've all made mistakes in life. That's what leads to success. One mistake can lead to many successes. But if you don't try, you don't make that mistake, you'll never get that success. And don't try and do everything at once. So try and take things slowly, do one thing at a time. So hopefully these things will help with our thoughts, with our emotions, and eventually our behavior. Now, this is generally for people who have mental health issues. It could be anxiety, sadness, depression, or you're just struggling in life, or you've got a lot on. Sometimes we lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We go through despair, helplessness. So these are just 4 tips I've written to help us overcome this. So the first is remember the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very important. Whatever you're going through, dear brother, dear sister, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can help you. In Allah la kulli shay'in qadir. Allah is competent over all things, capable. So whatever you're going through, whatever your calamity, medical illness, mental health illness is, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you more, 70 times more than your own mothers. Now, if you picture this, you vision this when you're making dua, when you're crying, I am talking to a being, my Lord, who loves me 70 times more than a mother. You will have mercy in your heart and you will have hope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your heart. Number 2, seek Allah's forgiveness. Even the Prophet ﷺ was free from sin, would seek out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. So we as sinners, all children of Adam are sinners, we need to seek Allah's forgiveness. Know that shaitan is weak. It's very important we know that shaitan is weak. Sometimes people think, whatever I'm going through, shaitan's won me. And shaitan is clever as well. Shaitan is very clever. So he will always say to you, you committed this sin, Allah will never forgive you. Allah will never forgive you. You're the worst person on the planet. You're the biggest sinner. But we know that with tawbah, it wipes the slate clean. You have to know shaitan is weak. Inna kayda shaitani kana da'ifa, that the plot of shaitan is weak. We are much stronger than shaitan. We just need to build ourselves. And lastly, think good of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's very important that we think good of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all situations. No matter what happens, we never lose hope, because that is a part of kufr and disbelief. Look at the story of Yaqub alayhi salam again, when he lost his son Yusuf alayhi salam and his second son Binyamin. What did he say? La tay'asu min rahmatillah. Do not lose hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be punctual on your salah. Read the Quran, dua, adhkar, etc. And I have realized this in my life, that sometimes we're all humans, we think negative, we lose hope. But thinking good of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has really changed the game for me. And often when I give advice to people, I always say, we like to think good of ourselves. We want people to think good of us. We think good of our wife, our husband. We think good of our parents. We think good of our children. But the greatest of being, do we always think good of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So it's very important that we remember this, inshallah. So somebody's asking these, okay, inshallah, we can note these points down. And then the next slide. Okay, so this is the last part, which was the title, Mental Health or Jinn. So before we come on to this, should take about 10-12 minutes. I just want to ask if anybody's got questions, please post them in, simply because this section is quite big, like at least 10-12 minutes. But if there's more questions, then I may finish earlier. And if there's not a lot of questions, then I may extend it for about 15 or 20 minutes. So questions are coming in, yeah. So keep your questions coming in, inshallah. I'll try and keep an eye on them. So just so we finish on time. Now, the topic of the seminar was mental health or jinn. And it's something which many Muslims are confused about. Where is the balance? Does it have to be one or the other? What does Islam say about mental health? Hopefully, we've covered enough of that. And what does Islam say about jinn? It says jinn. We could include in there evil eye, black magic, and other things. Now, before I start, I just want to mention that my counseling journey, why I became a counselor, was 7 years ago. I started practicing and performing ruqya on people. And alhamdulillah, it's the word of Quran, those who believe in it, those who have yaqeen, very important to have conviction. It made a difference. It saved marriages. Many people who could have children, they were able to have children. Many people who had medical issues as well, it resolved it. So along this journey, I realized that some people who came to me, men and women, it's not just women, men and women, they benefited from the ruqya, but that wasn't the be all and the end all. They also needed counseling. So I would refer them. But like I mentioned at the start, a lot of them, they would not go to basically any old counselor through NHS, or even some Muslims, because when they would talk about jinn and jadoo and black magic, even some Muslim counselors, believe it or not, were very negative towards this topic. So that's why I want to go through each one, what the Quran says, what Hadith says, symptoms, and then hopefully the balance. That does jinn exist in this country? I've heard many people say that jinn and black magic does not exist in this country. It's an India-Pakistan thing. I've heard others say that it doesn't exist at all. There's some people who completely deny it. And some people only believe in mental health. So on both sides, I do believe there's extreme. And inshallah, in these last 10, 15 minutes, hopefully, we'll clarify what is the Islamic approach. So first and foremost, with evil eye. Evil eye is known as nazar, hasad, ayn in Arabic. These sort of terms are used for evil eye. So if you look at the Quran explicitly talks about evil eye in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. وقال يا بني لا تدخلوا من باب واحد وادخلوا من أبواب متفرقة. That when Yaqub alayhi salam, he lost his son Yusuf alayhi salam, and then he sent the other sons, and they were entering Egypt, he mentioned that do not enter through one entrance and enter from different entrances. One of the reasons for this was Yusuf alayhi salam was known for his beauty, but also Yaqub alayhi salam's other sons were also known for their beauty. This is not often mentioned. It's only mentioned about Yusuf alayhi salam. So I'm proving here where the Quran talks about evil eye. So this verse, commentators mentioned that Yusuf alayhi salam's brothers were handsome. Hence Yaqub alayhi salam said, do not enter through one entrance. The word is bab, door, but it means entrance, because people will put nazar on you, evil eye. That proves evil eye. Another verse, وَيَكَادُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ لَمَّا سَمِعُوا الذِّكْرَ وَيَقُولُونَ إِنَّهُ لَمَجْنُونَ. So this is about the Prophet ﷺ. Allah says it's very close that the disbelievers will make you slip through their eyes. لَيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ. Through their eyes, they're going to make you slip. لَمَّا سَمِعُوا الذِّكْرَ. When they hear the Quran, dhikr here means Quran. وَيَقُولُونَ إِنَّهُ لَمَجْنُونَ. وَيَقُولُونَ إِنَّهُ لَمَجْنُونَ. And they will say, he's a madman. This is another verse, Ibn Abbas, Radiallahu Mujahid, and others. So this verse proves casting evil glances exist. Evil eye exists because Allah is telling Muhammad sallallahu the kuffar will put evil eye on you, which also shows evil eye nazar can come from non-Muslims. We can put on non-Muslims, they can put it on us. In terms of hadith, that's Quran, that it exists. In terms of hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-aynu haqqun wa naha anil wahshim. Evil eye is real, and he forbade from tattoos. So very clear, evil eye is real, it's haqq. Another verse in hadith in Bukhari, Ista'idhu billahi min al-ayn, fa inna al-ayn haqqun. Seek Allah's refuge from evil eye is real. And then another hadith, which I like to quote to show the seriousness of it, people who mock nazar, hasad, and don't take it seriously. Al-aynu tudkhilu rajul al-qabr wa tudkhilu al-jamal al-qidr. Through evil eye, a man will enter his grave, as in he'll kill him. وَتُدْخِلُ الْجَمَلَ الْقِدَرِ, and the camel will enter the pot, as it will be sacrificed, the camel will be sacrificed and eaten. This shows how serious and dangerous evil eye is. It can cause illnesses, and this is why we're creating a balance. Now, which one is it? The balance is, it doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be just evil eye or just mental health. Yeah, I've got a sore throat today. I've got a sore throat. My voice is not the best. And I could have a headache as well. I could have a migraine. But are you going to dismiss my migraine and say, no, 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 it's just your sore throat? A person can have a cough and he can have chest pain or a flu. You can have two medical issues going. In the same way, a person would have hasad, ayn, and he may have chest issues. He may have migraines. He may have insomnia. He may have sleep paralysis. And one can cause the other. So the balance is, you don't need to deny one, which is happening in this day and age. And I think particularly with the young generation, I see more denial of evil and black magic. They laugh and scoff when they hear these things in Jinn, and usually say, my grandma used to talk about it, or my granddad. And I'm not just making that up. When I've been on mental health courses, whether the instructor and tutor is Muslim or non-Muslim, the crowd is usually majority Muslim, but the young generation always laugh at these topics. So, symptoms. What are the symptoms of evil eye? Constantly yawning, but you don't want to sleep. Constantly burping, but you've not eaten anything. Hot and cold flushes for no reason. Tight-chested, insomnia, waswasa. Putting on weight, but you're not eating a lot. Headaches, hair loss, darkening of under the eyes. More women get this, dark circles under the eyes. Becoming pale, permanent headaches. Seeing ants in the house. Babies constantly crying and not having milk, and becoming very, very light, like yellow type of skin. These can be symptoms. The cure, inshallah, I'll do together for black magic and thing. So these are the symptoms of evil eye. So I've mentioned the balance, whether it's medical, whether it's mental health or evil eye, you can have both things and you don't have to deny one. But it's extreme where we only believe in medical. The Prophet ﷺ had black magic on him. So you can't say everything is just medical. The other extreme is everything's black magic. I don't believe in that. I've been doing ruqya for 6-7 years. I don't believe everything is black magic. Coming on to black magic, what does the Quran say about black magic known as jadoo in Urdu or Gujarati, sihr? So sihr is normally of two types, takhyili and hakiki. So takhyili is like the story of Musa alayhi salam. Yeah? And when he threw the ropes, it wasn't real magic, it was imaginative. The sihr, saharu a'yun an-nas, the black magic was done on their eyes, and they imagined them to be snakes. Hakiki is where, like, you separate husband and wife, fertility issues, employment issues, separating a mother from her daughter. It's actual black magic. So one of the longest verses in the Quran is the verse of Sulaiman alayhi salam, وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانُ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ. So he talks about Sulaiman alayhi salam. He didn't commit kufr, but he was the shaitan teaching people black magic. So black magic exists. Like I mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ, in the hadith is mentioned that a man called Lubayd bin Asib, he performed black magic upon the Prophet ﷺ. And for 6 months, at least 6 months, some say longer, he did not even know, the Prophet ﷺ did not know that black magic was done on him. The Prophet ﷺ did not know this. And sometimes when I narrate this, I say maybe it's so we understand. When people come to me for ruqya, they say, but I've been married for 10 years, 15 years. So that's their way of saying, I've always had marriage problems. Maybe you've always had black magic. The Prophet ﷺ had it for 6 months. So the Prophet ﷺ, he was cured through Surah Falak and Nas. These verses were revealed, and many other things that do help with black magic. So it exists. The symptoms for black magic are: a person is unable to interact with his spouse, have relationship, sexual intercourse, feeling extreme anger and hatred towards the spouse, obstacles or blocks in marriage or employment. Sometimes in your clothes, you'll find holes that have been there in your wardrobe, but it's been cut out of the garment. Clothes go missing, jewelry goes missing and found again, pins and needles poked into the furniture walls around the home, constant headaches and feeling pain in the stomach, constant divorce, second time, third time divorce, remarrying, miscarriages can also be caused by black magic, feeling sick or constantly vomiting, abandoning salah, Quran, inclined towards sin, wanting to cry, anger or rage for small reasons, everything annoys you, triggers you off. Finding a dead cat or part of it slaughtered in your house or backyard, like a dead bird, finding taweez in the house, eggshells, bones, hair, nails, and screws, etc. Running in the house, footsteps, could be shaitan, jinns. So a lot of black magic is done through jinns. So these are the symptoms. Now the cure, I'm going to do like a general cure, like what we'd give for evil eye or black magic. And one of the first things we give is obviously the person, he performs ruqya on himself or he goes to somebody to get ruqya done. Secondly is Surah Baqarah, reciting of Surah Baqarah. I understand a lot of people put on YouTube, it's good for barakah, it doesn't really help in curing. I don't know anybody who got cured from reciting Surah Baqarah. Manzil. Manzil is a collection of 33 verses. Manzil is very powerful, and I do give Manzil for people who come to me. So Manzil is very good. Using olive oil. Olive oil is very good to apply to the body, massage it on. It helps reduce the effects of shaitan and jinn. Black seed oil is another one, very good. Hijama, anytime. Sunnah days is hadith of shifa. Ajwa, 7 dates in the morning. Zamzam, black seed oil, cures everything except death. Give it sadaqah, big sadaqah, like an animal or a well, with the intention Allah grant me shifa from evil eye. Going to Hajj and Umrah is helpful. Ruqya bath with Ruqya water. The morning, evening du'as. Now, this is one which I feel generally is not emphasized as much, morning, evening du'as, the whole set. I know a lot of us just read one or two. Allahumma bika asbahna bika amsayna, bismillah alladhi, but there's a good set of 12, 15 du'as. Get the cards, they're online, print them out, memorize them. Very good for protection. Dua books like Hizbul Azam, Bawadat, Munajati Maqbul, and then honey. Honey, the Prophet ﷺ said, make use of the two cures, honey and Quran. So this is just a short list of what can help you. Now, I mentioned earlier about the balance, that even there's some doctors, GP Muslims, and I've heard their talks and seminars where they say you don't have to deny one. You can have mental health and you can have jinn jadoo issues. Back to myself, why I became a counselor, because I realized it wasn't just about ruqya, they needed mental health counseling. So I can provide both, number one. Secondly, is a lot of people who go through severe evil eye, severe jinn jadoo issues, no doubt it will affect your mental health. Throughout this whole seminar, I've mentioned what causes mental health, why people get mental health, anxiety, depression, work issues, family issues, divorce, marriage, death. Black magic, when it's severe, it can really damage somebody's life. No doubt it's going to make them feel down, depressed, and low. No doubt it's going to affect their mental health. So I don't deny both. They need the ruqya and they need the counseling. And that's the best balance, hopefully, I can provide. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to implement the knowledge which has been relayed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all those shifa who are suffering from mental health or evil eye or jinn or jadoo. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all towards beneficial knowledge. Now, inshallah, we will open it up for questions. So I'll just go from the bottom. Could you tell us if hysteria is an actual mental health issue? So yes, a lot of people who suffer from hysteria, it can be a mental health issue. Things like CBT can help. Different types of counseling can help. Maybe I would also seek GP's advice on that as well. So questions. So what exactly or when did Muslims begin to fall? What caused them to trade their knowledge and wisdom for idiocracy? Is immigration the main thing because it caused so much fragmentation? Okay, that's a lot of questions. So firstly, I'm assuming you're relating to when I mentioned the Muslim psychologists and psychiatrists and the fathers of medicine. Why didn't have Muslims fallen? Many reasons why Muslims fallen, whether it's to do with psychiatry, psychology, or our lack of academia, is the first reason is we have left Quran and Hadith. Muslims, not generalizing, but if someone asked me what is the fall of the Muslims, my general answer would be lack adherence to Quran and Hadith, love of the world, love of Western academia, Western knowledge, and leaving Islamic knowledge. So that's probably the reason for the fall. And I'm sure many other ulama will give you other answers. Is immigration the main thing because it caused so much fragmentation? So immigration is not the main thing or the only thing. It was one of the things I mentioned that led to the beginnings of mental health. Was it false leadership, for example, involved with politics and ties with enemies, misleading people? Was it compromising Eastern for more Western thought? Is it simply because people got lost in poverty and had to do some catching up? What that they lost their knowing? Is there one main thing? Okay, like I said, it could be a number of things. It could be compromising our deen or Western values, and there could be other forms of poverty as well, not just basically what I mentioned, immigration. So yeah, you're right. There could be a number of answers. Right, talking about voices. So I'm assuming you're talking about hearing voices and you start to hear voices. Okay, so with hearing voices, sometimes a person, it could be some sort of hallucination. Sometimes it could be jinn, waswasa from shaitan. And I'm looking at both. People who come to me for counseling, a lot of them have hallucination. They see things, they hear things, they're not actually there. And some people have jinn as well. So you might want to get counseling done, you might want to get ruqya done as well. How do you do Fatiha ruqya? I'm not sure what that question is, Talat Chaudhry, if you want to ask that question again. Fatiha ruqya, as in read Surah Fatiha. Yeah, you can read Surah Fatiha 7 times, 3 times, once, blow into your hands and pour it yourself, if that's the question. If I've misunderstood, please elaborate. How to know whether we are suffering from mental health or jinns? Okay, I explained the balance. How do you know? Is with mental health, look at the symptoms. I've mentioned some symptoms of anxiety, depression. Do you have them? And they do overlap. If you notice, some of the things I said, symptoms of evil eye, black magic, they will overlap. And if you feel you've got more ruqya jinn, go to a raqi. Can people give their negativity or evilness and take your positivity and purity just by being around you? For example, during sexual intercourse. So, can people give you negative energy? I guess we can all feel negative energy. I've been around people and felt they are negative. Sometimes it could be people who are away from deen as well due to sins. You'll feel negativity or evilness, like we said. And in a similar way, I met pious religious people, imam and ulama and scholars, and sometimes even people in the average Joe public who are pious, and I will feel their positivity. Um, not just for mental, but in general, if there is no reaction to Ruqya Baraki says jinn may be hidden, how on earth will the person know what it is? So if you don't have a reaction in Ruqya, then I don't understand why the Raki says jinn may be hidden, unless it's in the house or something. How will you know? Start reading Surah Baqarah in your house. I've been suffering from jinn possession through black magic, and I also have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Okay, so back to what I said, you may have both. The jinn possession is there, like magic, and you all also have borderline personality disorder. I would say deal with both, and that's why I said I do counseling and ruqya, because we deal with both. You don't have to single one out. What methods or treatments you followed, may I ask? So I think I answered that when I mentioned Surah Baqarah, Manzil, Hijama, black seed oil, olive oil, honey, giving sadaqah, etc. If your parents are possessed by jinn, the shaitan is using their vessel to invoke your law. Are you allowed to go no contact, or do you have duty? So if it's causing, it can, I did mention, the sign of black magic is separation between mother, daughter, father, and son. I wouldn't say go no contact. If it's extreme, like your parents are hitting you, throwing stuff at you every time you turn up, then maybe for a couple of weeks, go low profile. But we don't tell anybody to cut off. You still have a duty to your parents. I would say maybe get their treatment done, protect yourself as well, morning, evening, athkar, manzil, etc. But build up the relationship. Don't let shaitan win. How to know if you are suffering from the jinn or black magic? Look at the symptoms. I mentioned go to a raki. Can you tell who is afflicting you if what happened to you happens to them karma? They say that if you do black magic, it comes back. It's not that simple. Not that simple as your question states that. Can you tell who is afflicting you happens to them? Because, for example, I have a number of people come to me for ruqya, right? Some may be brothers, some may be sisters, but they got the same issue, same symptoms. So if the sister's getting migraines and the other brother's getting migraines, it doesn't mean her brother is doing black magic. But if you know and have signs of suspicion, then yeah, black magic, it will go back to them. Allah takes revenge on any type of oppression, whether it's black magic, jinn, etc. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Did the Prophet ﷺ not die from black magic? No, he didn't die from black magic. He got cured through Surah Falak and Nas. Is exorcism a synonym for ruqya? Or yeah, exorcism is a synonym for ruqya. Exorcism is what Christians do, and it's very similar. They recite verses, throw water, use holy water. We also give ruqya water. What if after doing everything, one can try? Doctors talking about mindfulness, medicine, ruqya. The healing is stuck and actually has worsened. Okay, then there's something you're missing. Let's look at the rest of the question. Even triggers from trauma and people keep repeating the toxic abuse, there's no more support from people and relatives, etc. Tawakkul and sabr is important. What else can be done to make you feel useless? Okay. I think personally, with this long question, it seems like you've exhausted yourself. You've tried a lot of things. I'm trying to think of people who come to me in your situation. They've been coming to me for a year, 2 years. They don't see much of a difference. I will also look at haram earnings. Haram earnings can be a block for shifa. Another one is cutting ties with parents and siblings can be a block for shifa. Major sins can be blocked for shifa. So you might want to look at that. And I would say maybe try another doctor, try another counselor, try another raki. I'm, alhamdulillah, when people come to me, they don't get better, I'm more than happy to refer them to somebody else. It's not about me. Surah Baqarah, does it expel jinns? Yes, it does. Hadith says, I think he meant to say that listening to Surah. Yeah, what I said is listening to Surah Baqarah. What happens, everybody who comes to me is putting Surah Baqarah on YouTube and then telling me the jinn hasn't gone. The Prophet ﷺ did not say, play Surah Baqarah on YouTube. He said, read it. You have to read it. Reading cures it. I've done the hysteria one. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, brother. How do we get in contact with you? So you can get in contact with me through the MFF website. How to know if you're suffering that magic. Now, get ruqya, and then seeing shadows. It could be psychosis, it could be jinns again, it could be both. But you need to get yourself checked. How do you reconcile sabr and mental health? So sabr is a general term. Any trial, tribulation, death, divorce, calamity, mental health, jinn, jadoo. So, assalamu alaikum, brother, please come up your phone number. So again, if you want to get counseling done, please contact through the MFF website. How can you deal with what's happening in Palestine? Many ways. I don't think it's related, but protesting, boycotting, dua, demonstrations, going to awareness programs about Palestine, 75 years, why is there genocide happening, educate people. I've got a talk on YouTube. If you put my name in and Al-Aqsa Palestine, you'll see a talk on there as well, which gives a history of Palestine. How do I access the recording? Inshallah, the admins will deal with the recording. Dua for evil eye anxiety. So I mentioned evil eye morning, evening azkar, and manzil, and the dua for anxiety, inshallah. Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'altahu sahla wa anta taj'alul hazna sahlan idha shi'ta. Why is it widespread the hysteria thing of passing down psychology? Do you know black magic ruqya? Can you share the slides? I'm happy to share the slides inshallah. I'll speak to the admin. What is the steps in doing ruqya with Surah Fatiha? Okay, so ruqya with Surah Fatiha is basically you pray Surah Fatiha once, 3 times, 7 times, and then you blow, you cup your hand and blow. You can blow into water and drink it. You can blow into olive oil and apply it. Symptoms of evil eye, I've done it. How can you deal with partners that give you the cold shoulder? Okay, so this is more to do with marriage. Partners giving cold shoulder, I would speak to him, speak to the family, or maybe take them for marriage counseling if it's a long-term issue. Would the average person know? No, I wouldn't say the average person knows how to do black magic. What is manzil? So basically, it's a book of 33 verses, ruqya verses. Somehow, inshallah, will, if people want it, I'll try and get to people who need it. But if you put it in any search engine, manzil PDF, it should come up. Doctors say infertility is not medical, meaning all tests good, but no reaction. So how to resolve this? So many people who had infertility, sisters who come to me, I say read Surah Baqarah. Surah Baqarah every 3 days and Surah Rahman and blow into water. Okay. Or jinns that possess you known as shayateen. Yeah, so you get good jinns like good humans and bad jinns as bad humans and shayateen. Assalamu alaikum, Luqman, wa alaikum salam. Osman. How do you deal with people who say that psychology has evolved from hysteria and exorcism? Modern psychology of today. I'm not too sure about that. A female Iraqi who does counseling. I'm not sure. In the country, there are very few female Iraqis. I'm not sure of details, but there was one in Manchester and Sheffield. I don't have the details though. If there's haram in the house will be filled with jinns and problems, as that family is suffering so many problems and kinship and have been destroyed, but no one sees the root. So, yeah, if you have haram in the house, you've got TV, music, pictures, then it will attract shaitan. Then the family has problems. You need to advise them, take them to an imam, get somebody to talk to them. Waswasa, there is a verse, رَبِّ أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ هَمَزَاتِ الشَّيَاطِينِ وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ رَبِّ أَنْ يَحْضُرُونِ Rabbi, a'udhu bika min hamazati shayateen wa a'udhu bika rabbi yahdurun. Do you do marriage counseling? Yes. Again, you can contact through the MFF website. And I think that's the last question. So Jazakallah khairan to everybody for attending. I hope it's been beneficial. Any feedback, inshallah, constructive feedback, feel free to put in the chat or send to the admins. So you recommend to read Surah Baqarah every day, and if a child who has issues and cannot read themselves, the parents can read. Parents can read. Another session, I'm not too sure, inshallah. And yeah, inshallah, your husband agrees to marriage counseling. How do you trust someone who can see jinns in the family? Some people can be visual, but yeah, that's a bit concerning. Do jinns try to get you to see when they see you are close to Allah, or do they try to get you before that? Probably try and get you before you're close to Allah. So your protection is low. Sheikh, what do you advise to give pregnant woman who's dealing with jinn possession? Pregnant woman, it's quite, yeah, basically, I would say, listen to Ruqya. Listen to Ruqya. If you put my name on YouTube, and you'll see Ruqya section, you can listen to any of them. And also, what I'll do for those who wanted Manzil, I will post a Manzil PDF in the chat. So whoever wants to know what Manzil is, there's a PDF, and I'll put this. Everybody, hopefully. Has that come through for everybody yet? So English version of Manzil, it should be on that link. I think it's on the link. Otherwise, you can get transliteration. So you know how his friend Jinn in their home, things moving in the family, aren't Muslim. However, our friend is a revert, he doesn't know how to read Quran. Get a Raki to recite Quran. If you're getting sick, the more you read Quran or do zikr, then you have a spiritual problem. How would someone contact me for Ruqya? Is through the MFF website. So inshallah, that's the end of the session. Those who want to leave can leave. How can I balance and keep my baby safe? Don't listen to extreme Ruqya. If you listen to basically Ruqya where it's not too severe, and inshallah, I'll post one now. So I'm going to post one link for Ruqya, and if you go onto the playlist, who was asking about pregnant lady listening to Ruqya, so I've posted one link. Any on the playlist should be okay. You feel controlled by a jinn, then again you need to treat it. Is that from Sahaba's time for people seeing jinns that have affected the family? Yes, there was evidence from the time of the Sahabas. Yeah, it's ideally best to read Surah Bakr every day. If you can't, then every 2 days or 3 days is permissible as well. To read Surah Bakr daily for now, and let's reduce Ruqya sessions. And that's why I said with the pregnancy, it is a risk. With the pregnancy, it is a risk. What do you read for black magic? Specific for black magic, you can read Surah Yasin or Surah Safat, Surah Rahman. These surahs are good daily. Blow into water and drink it. Antipsychotics, I'm not too sure about. Sahaba story, off the top of my head, I'm not sure of the Sahaba's name, but there was a Sahabi who basically, he got married and he killed a snake in his first night, and that was a jinn. So that jinn was in his house. I'm not sure of the Sahabi's name. YouTube link as I joined late. Okay, there will be recording sent out. Contains, yeah, jinn can possess animals as well. Can we blow on olive oil from reciting Surah Bakr only? Yes. Manzil is good. The PDF I posted. It's short, 5 minutes, blown to olive oil. You can do full Surah Baqarah. Or like I said, that's the Ruqya link again. If an animal is possessed, you'll know by odd behavior, violent. If you have like a cat in the house, people know the cat is possessed. When you play Manzil, no. Because it's Quran, you can't read Manzil on Menses or Surah Baqarah. Golden rule for identifying reliable Raki. Sincerity is important. How can you know that? They don't charge you high prices, 200, 300 pounds. If it's a sister, you go with the mahram, and the treatment they give you is from the Quran and Sunnah. Yeah, this YouTube link you can listen to when you're pregnant. No, Iraqi does not need to touch your head. I know some do, but they don't have to. I don't touch man or woman's head. It's not wrong because they say it affects. It's a bit like a doctor out of necessity, but it's best to avoid. Some wear a glove and do it. Are there foods we should avoid if we're afflicted? No, not really. Generally, takeaway, I say avoid it. It's not spiritual. It's not good. Try and eat home food. Ajwa dates are good. Yeah, istighfar is very good, 200, 300 times a day, up to 1,000 for trying to conceive. And also, somebody asked about pregnancy, so try and post that link. Pregnancy surahs. So these surahs which I'm posting now are very good for miscarriages, labor. So 200, 300 times istighfar, and these surahs are very good for fertility issues, miscarriages, you can't conceive. The channels are unwanted. Can parents do evil eye and destroy a child's life? Yeah, you can destroy a child's life through evil eye. Whether the child was wanted or not, they can do that. Menstruation cramps, yeah, cramps, you can recite these surahs as well, yeah. Anytime for istighfar. And this is a dua for the anxiety. Astaghfirullah, you can write Astaghfirullah, Astaghfirullah, alladhi la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum wa atubu alayh, any words of istighfar. This is another dua for anxiety. First session of Ruqya, only we will know we got Jinn. Yeah, you should find that in the first session. And this was the other anxiety dua. My husband doesn't react to Ruqya, only I do. He hasn't been exempt. He did a medical test, but he's fine. Could his health issues due to sihr? Yeah, sihr can cause medical issues. That's correct. So that's the dua for anxiety. Ameen and Jazakallah. I think we will be ending the session. Is it 7 o'clock? Can you recommend any treatments for that child? Pray manzil blow on the child. If you feel sihr is done on you and you reach age of 30 and struggling with get mad, what can you do? Get yourself treated. You've got sihr, you can't get mad, get yourself treated. So inshallah we will end there. Jazakallah khairan to everybody and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward everybody.